Everyone thinks the Gladius is a Roman invention. Wrong. Romans stole it from enemies after their worst defeat. Changed one detail, 20 centimeters, and this conquered the world. I'll explain why 20 centimeters decided the fate of Europe. August 2nd, 216 BC. Plains near the city of Cannae in southern Italy. Romans fielded 80,000 legionaries against Hannibal, the largest army in their history. On their belts hung Greek xiphos swords about 60 centimeters long, reliable weapons tested for centuries. By evening that day, 50,000 Romans lay dead on the battlefield. This is the largest single-day battle in ancient history. Hannibal surrounded the legions and methodically destroyed them at the edges. And here Romans first encountered en masse Spanish mercenaries, Celtiberians from central Spain. They had their own swords. Roman historian Livy later described wounds from Spanish swords, severed arms and legs, terrible injuries. He wrote that Romans first saw such horrific wounds and were frightened by the very sight. The Spanish sword was 60 to 68 centimeters, leaf-shaped, wide in the middle, tapering to a point. You could slash with a swing and stab in close combat, universal weapon. So after Cannae, Romans did what they always did best, looked at the winners' weapons and copied them. When war moved to Spain, legionaries began taking trophy swords en masse. By the end of the 3rd century BC, Roman blacksmiths started forging copies. Thus appeared the Gladius Hispaniensis, the Spanish sword, standardized, identical for all legionaries. With this sword, Romans reconquered Spain, crushed Macedonians, conquered Greece. The stolen sword became the symbol of legions. Meanwhile, war was changing again, and soon Romans would have to steal an idea from themselves. Rome expanded at unprecedented speed. Gaul, Macedonia, Greece, legions won everywhere. But war changed. Now battles were fought by mass armies, tens of thousands of legionaries advancing in closed formation. The testudo formation appeared, the tortoise, shield to shield, solid wall, impenetrable box. Problem, in tight formation, there's no room to swing. The Spanish gladius, at 60 to 68 centimeters, is too long. A legionary swings, hits his neighbor's elbow. Tries to stab, sword catches on shields. Enemies began exploiting this. Pressed with formations, prevented Romans from fighting. Romans again changed the sword for the new reality. Under Emperor Augustus appeared the gladius mines, 50 to 55 centimeters. There they are, those 20 centimeters. From 60 to 68 made into 50 to 55. Sounds trivial? This changed everything. Imagine a modern analogy. Tactical knife versus katana in a narrow corridor. Long katana is useless. Knife wins. Same physics. The shortened sword worked differently. A legionary held it behind his shield and delivered short stabbing strikes. Picture this. You're an enemy, standing before a Roman line. You see only a wall of shields. Don't see swords, don't see arms. And suddenly, from behind the shield edge, a point flies out, fast, into the belly, and withdraws. You didn't have time to react. Next stripe, 1 second later, and another. The short sword gave speed. A legionary threw his arm forward like a boxer throws a jab. Enemies didn't see the strike until the last moment. Shield covered the body, sword struck from cover. Into belly, groin, thigh, where there's no armor. Romans didn't aim for iron. They aimed for unprotected body parts. With the mine sword, Romans conquered Germania, Britain, Dacia. Germanic tribes with long swords tried to swing and got hit first. In close combat, short sword beat long sword because it was faster. 20 centimeters, the difference between universal weapon and specialized tool. Romans abandoned flexibility. In return, got a machine for winning close combat. Shorter equals deadlier. This contradicts instincts, but physics doesn't lie. But Romans didn't know their genius weapon hid a fatal weakness. They'd learn this 300 years later when it would be too late. When short became even shorter. By mid-1st century AD, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Egypt, On the borders, over 300,000 soldiers. New problem, the mine's Gladius is complex to produce. Curved shape requires a master's work. Empire needs thousands of swords fast and cheap. Solution, Gladius Pompeii. Length, 45 to 50 centimeters, even shorter. Key feature, straight edges, no curves. Any blacksmith could forge it in a day. Compromise, almost impossible to slash, only stab. But in tight formation, you don't need to slash anyway. Empire began mass-producing swords. Industrialization of war 1,500 years before the Industrial Revolution. Under Trajan, Empire reached maximum borders. Everywhere, legions with identical swords, one tactic. Worth noting, when everything is optimized for one tactic, changing it becomes impossible. And on the borders appeared enemies against whom the old tactic didn't work. And here, the short sword turned from strength into curse. Germania, 168 AD, Marcomannic Wars. A legionary stands in the line of the third cohort. In hand, Pompey Gladius, 45 centimeters. Before him, Germanic warrior with an 80-centimeter sword. The German swings from distance. Legionary tries to close in. His Gladius can't reach the enemy. German steps back and slashes from above. Shield cracks. Legionary moves forward again, gets hit before he can respond. Short sword is useless. Enemy stays out of reach. And it's true. Germans don't charge headlong into a tortoise of shields. They flank, attack columns on the march. Sarmatian cavalry rides past, shoots from bows, retreats. Roman tactic of stand in a wall and stab only works against an enemy charging head-on. New enemies don't do that. In Dacia, Romans encountered the falx, long curved swords that cut through shields and armor. Short Gladius can't answer these strikes. The weapon that conquered Europe became the cause of defeats. Romans changed weapons again, for the last time. By the end of the 2nd century, legions switched to the spatha, 70 to 85 centimeters, universal sword. Return to the length of the Spanish Gladius where it all started. Full circle in 300 years. Long sword, short, long. Spatha suited the new war. Mobile cavalry maneuvers, not frontal clashes of formations. Gladius passed into history. By the 3rd century, it remained only in amphitheaters, with gladiators. Where combat was one-on-one, the short sword still made sense. But on battlefields, its time ended. 20 centimeters isn't just length. It's the difference between two philosophies of war. Romans stole the gladius from enemies after their worst defeat, then changed it 4 times. Stole, shortened, simplified, lengthened. Each time, answer to a new war. This is Rome's secret. They didn't win because they had the best weapon. They won because they weren't afraid to change weapons when war demanded it. Greeks held on to the phalanx and lost. Carthaginians held on to mercenaries and disappeared. Romans held on to the ability to adapt. 20 centimeters decided Europe's fate not because it was the right length, but because Romans understood. The right length doesn't exist. There's only length for this enemy, this tactic, this war. Do you have your own Gladius in life? A tool that once worked perfectly, but the war changed? Maybe it's time to steal a new idea, even from yourself. Stolen weapon conquered the world. Because Romans didn't just steal it. They kept stealing it from reality, again and again. Hit the like button if you learned something new. Subscribe to the channel. Ahead are many more stories about how Romans changed the world. Write in the comments which ancient weapon interests you most.